An imperious century from new signing Joe Clark helped Nottinghamshire to a strong position at the end of the first day's play. There were a lot of star names on show at Trent Bridge as Stuart Broad and Notts hosted England captain Joe Root's Yorkshire. Notts fell away after a strong start last year, but have strengthened with young English talent, especially in the batting with Chappell, Duckett, Slater and Clark looking to push for international honours. Nottinghamshire's new opening pairing made a positive start in testing conditions after being put into bat by Yorkshire at Trent Bridge. Duckett in particular looked to be continuing his good form from pre-season with 3 early boundaries. Duckett and Slater then raced along to 75. However, all good things come to an end, and Duckett fell for an enterprising 43 from 51 balls. A short ball from Yorkshire captain Patterson coming onto him quicker than expected, Waite with the catch. Slater was then joined in the middle by Nash, and they continued in slightly more circumspect fashion to help Notts to a healthy 112 for 1 at lunch. Not long after lunch, Slater became the first batsman of the season to reach 50, but it wasn't long before he was looking for a new partner as Nash fell LBW to Waite. Clark started elegantly in his first match for Notts, but Slater fell for 73, a poor end to an excellent knock, giving South African Olivier his first wicket for Yorkshire and leaving Notts 172 for 3. They moved on quickly with captain Mullaney asserting himself. Clark continued in stylish fashion as Notts passed 200. They became the first team to record a batting bonus point and were 222 for 3 at tea. At the start of the evening session, Olivier ended a stand of 54 when Mullaney flashed outside his off stump to his first ball after the break, Lyth snaffling the catch. Clark, however, was able to reach a debut 50 for his new county in beautiful fashion, stroking a back foot drive to the boundary. Regular wickets were starting to turn the day Yorkshire's way, with Patel falling for just 11 after steering a ball to second slip that wasn't wide enough to cut. Brooke this time on hand to pouch the catch. Clark pushed on, largely untroubled, and entered the 90s with back-to-back boundaries. He completed an imperious debut century soon afterwards from 165 deliveries, mixing excellent patience with superb stroke play. Notts 324 for 5 at the close of play, with Joe Clark unbeaten on 109, Tom Moores with him on 11. Honours even in Root and Broad duel at Trent Bridge. Yorkshire's Dwayne Olivier had struggled slightly on day one, taking 2 rather expensive wickets as Clark and Slater batted Notts into a strong position. Olivier seemed to have found his rhythm by the start of day 2, however, as he steamed in to bowl a spell brimming with pace and fire. He began by jagging one back and uprooting Clark's middle stump, the Centurion only managing to add 3 to his overnight score. Moores then picked out Ballance with a loose drive, before Olivier completed a debut 5-wicket haul, setting Broad up with a nasty short ball and then pinning him in front with a superb Yorker. Notts were able to counter-attack to take them beyond the 400 mark, before Cochran fell for a well-made 46 to wrap up the innings. Patterson finishing with 4 wickets. Yorkshire survived until lunch unscathed as Brooke helped himself to a couple of boundaries off ball. Yorkshire started well after lunch, with Lyth taking a couple of glorious cover drives off Broad, and Brooke also mainly dealt in boundaries. But the England man had the last laugh as he trapped Brooke plumb LBW. Fletcher then produced a peach to send Ballance's off-stump flying and bring England captain Joe Root to the crease. Typically, Root settled in quickly with a couple of drives, but he got lucky when Coughlan located his edge, Duckett putting down a tough chance. Root looked determined to make Notts pay for their profligacy, taking Yorkshire past the 100 mark with a vintage back foot punch. Lythe brought up his 50 soon afterwards, with 40 of his runs coming from boundaries. Not long afterwards, Lythe and Root brought up a positive 50 partnership, coming from just 52 balls. Lythe was looking in excellent touch and seemed set for a significant score, timing a beautiful on-drive back-pass ball. There was to be no century for Lythe, however, as he mistimed a drive off-ball and fell for an excellent, if ultimately frustrating, 81 in the final session. The anticipated duel between Broad and Root began after tea, with Broad beating the bat a few times, but Root hit back with a trademark back-foot drive. Broad was able to tempt Kola Cadmore into hooking, and Coughlan took the catch in the deep. Before Fletcher swung the game Nottinghamshire's way as Leaning shouldered arms to a ball that clattered into his off stump. The runs dried up for Joe Root, and he was marooned somewhat on 49 as Nottinghamshire's bowlers kept it tight, but he was eventually able to get to his 50, bringing up the Yorkshire 200 in the process. That before the umpires brought the players off due to bad light and ended the day's play. Joe Clarke thrives again as Notts dominate day 3. Honours were largely even in the hotly anticipated duel between friends and England colleagues Joe Root and Stuart Broad on day 2, but Notts were able to chip away at the Yorkshire batting order to put themselves in the box seat in the game. Root still remained, however, 56 not out overnight and ready to resume hostilities with Broad in the morning session. Under grey and gloomy conditions at Trent Bridge, the Nottinghamshire bowlers were able to find some swing to make life uncomfortable for the Yorkshire batsmen early on. And Fletcher duly made the breakthrough when, having driven the previous delivery before, Tattersall went for it again and was comprehensively bowled. Waite came out to join Root and showed some sound technique in only his 7th first-class match. Notts changed tack and brought on Samit Patel to bowl some left-arm spin, and it worked wonders almost immediately as Root charged down the pitch to smash him to the boundary, but succeeded only in edging to Mullaney at slip, a huge breakthrough for Notts in removing the England captain for 73. And Yorkshire looked to be in big trouble when Patel struck again to take Waite's edge, Mullaney pouching the catch with a little bit of help from Tom Moores. The introduction of Patel proved a masterstroke when for the third time in less than 20 minutes he took the edge and Mullaney the catch. This time it was Yorkshire captain Patterson who fell. Yorkshire's last wicket pair weren't going to die wondering as Code decided to take Patel on, hitting him for consecutive sixes. Nottinghamshire decided enough was enough and they brought Broad back into the attack, the England seamer digging a short one into Olivier, who could only fend it behind to the keeper. Yorkshire all out for 291, a significant lead for Notts of 117. Code finishing 26 not out. In the Nottinghamshire reply, Code took the positive momentum from smashing a few runs into his bowling, and he angled one across Slater to find the edge, Lythe with the catch at second slip. Nottinghamshire reached lunch on 17 for 1, having dominated the morning session, with Samit Patel the star for his 3 wickets in as many overs. Duckett came out for the afternoon session looking like he meant business as he began in typical fashion, plundering boundaries and advancing at quicker than a runner ball. Nash was looking a little more circumspect than his partner, but the Notts lead quickly raced past 150. And Duckett soon moved to 50 from just 52 balls with a crisp reverse sweep off Root. The Notts man looked to be taking the game away from Yorkshire when Olivier came round the wicket and was able to cramp him for room. Duckett prodding at the ball and Lythe taking a smart catch. Duckett falling for an attractive 61. Clarke came out and continued his form from the first innings with a couple of beautiful drives through the covers. Nash had largely been batting in the shadow of his more expansive partners, but successive stylish boundaries brought him to the cusp of a half-century. And he reached that not long before the tea break. That ended a brilliant afternoon session for Notts as they added an expansive 143 for the loss of just 1 wicket to give them an imposing lead of 277. They would look to push on for a declaration to set up a win on day 4. Notts picked up as they left off after the tea break, looking to push on towards a lead of 400 before a potential declaration. Yorkshire were able to stem the run rate slightly, but Nash and Clark brought up the 100 partnership before Nash fell for 75, trying to pull Olivier to the boundary, but only succeeding in finding the hands of Root. Clark then brought up his 50 by whipping Patterson to the square leg boundary. And the arrival of Mullaney saw a rapid increase in the run rate as he took both Root and Olivier for boundaries. He quickly reached his 50 at a runner ball, but was then cleaned up trying to smash weight to the boundary once more. The captain had pushed his team into a lead beyond 400, but when Moores also fell to weight, it seemed Notts were holding off the declaration in order to allow Clark to reach a second 100 of the match as he entered the 90s. He didn't quite get there as he ran out of time on 97 not out, and we'll have to wait to see if he is able to get a second debut century or if Notts declare overnight. Their lead is 446 going into the final day. Root and Ballance ensure it's honours even between Notts and Yorkshire. Joe Clark moved to within a second century of his debut match as Nottinghamshire pushed towards a declaration on day 3 against Yorkshire. Samit Patel was the star with the ball as he claimed 3 wickets in as many overs to help Notts to a first innings lead of 117. Clark then built on the good work of Duckett, Nash and Mullaney, who also scored 50s. It came as a shock, however, when news came through before play that Notts had declared overnight, leaving Clark stranded just 3 short of what would have been the impressive feat of twin centuries in his debut match for his new county. The Yorkshire openers made a solid start to their attempt to save the game before Brooke got squared up by an excellent ball from Ball and got a leading edge, while Nash took a brilliant low-diving catch. Broad and Ball had Lythe in all kinds of trouble as they went around the wicket, and eventually he left one from Ball that held its line to bowl him and send the stumps flying. Broad greeted his friend and England captain with a brutal bouncer first ball, which caught Root flush on the helmet. Ballance eventually got off the mark after half an hour by pulling Ball to the boundary, and when the Notts change bowlers came on, Ballance started to cash in with a succession of boundaries. Root and Ballance able to steady the ship through to lunch with a solid partnership of 48 to take Yorkshire to 72 for 2. A good effort after losing both of those openers early. Root was beginning to look in ominous form, driving Ball to the fence and punching Patel for 4. He then thumped a Cochran short ball to the boundary to bring up his 50 and pulled 3 more balls that over in the same fashion to bring up the 100 partnership. Broad was belatedly brought back into the attack with the game looking to be heading for a draw, and Ballance reached his 50 with a clip off his legs from Cochran, a patient innings off 167 balls, just what his side needed. Tea arrived with the partnership worth 157 and the game seemingly petering out, but Root would look to push on from 86 not out to his century in the final session. Ballance decided he would need to accelerate if he wanted to reach a century of his own and clattered Ball for successive boundaries. A drive through the covers and clip through mid-wicket brought him 2 further 4s. And Root reached his century in typical fashion with a lovely off-drive from Ball, a brilliant knock from the England captain. All that remained was to see if Ballance could join him with a century of his own, and he duly did with a sweetly struck 6 over long on off Samit Patel. That proved to be the last act of the game as the captains shook hands with Yorkshire on 277 for 2. Nottinghamshire will be disappointed after getting themselves in a position to win the game, but an exceptional partnership between Root and Ballance worth 253 rescued it for Yorkshire. Notts finished with 12, Yorkshire taking 9 points from the match.